Every year in the surfing industry there's this thing called the Hot 100 for the junior surfers, and basically it's a collection of the 6 best junior surfers that get to go on a trip and highlight their surfing capabilities and their strengths, and basically get them together and just go and make a really cool vid. This trip was to the USA. We went to California. The plan was to go from San Francisco in the north and then take the Highway 1 all the way down the coast, stopping at various places along the way, with the final destination to be right down in the south of California at San Diego. The 6 surfers that we took on this trip were Owen Wright, Stuart Kennedy, Garrett Parkes, Noah Lane, Dean Bowen and Mitch Crews. It was a really good group of hot surfers. At that point in time, Owen had not lost a heat all year. He'd smashed every single event on the junior series that he'd been in, and Noah Lane was the only other guy to win an event that year. Expectations were high going into that trip. You know, we'd all hoped that we were going to score some amazing waves. We had so much coastline to cover. The reality of it was that at that time of year, California wasn't really expected to get the pumping swells that it can get. So it was challenging, but at the same time, everyone was frothing to get on the road and just, get amongst it.
The Hot 100 trip was probably the funniest trip. We were in 2 camper vans, which was fucking real tight with 9 of us. Yeah, it was pretty funny. I was in the van with Garrett and Dino. This is the funniest 2 kids in the world. They're just classic. They're just so different. And Dino's just this big bogan footy head, and Garrett's this little hardcore rock out kid. Yeah, it was a pretty fun trip. The waves sucked, but still throttled out here and there.
Needless to say, there was lots of shit talking going on in the van. There's lots of long drives and, lots of carry on. These guys are like 19, so they're up to no good at every turn, basically. And it was a lot of fun. The boys were having a good time.
Welcome to Australia.
We did the general tourist thing and went and checked out all the sites like the Golden Gate Bridge and all the sites around San Francisco. Couple of little waves at the first stop. It was cold, it was miserable, but the boys were just frothing to get in the water and wash off the journey. There was a lot of driving on this trip. We packed into those RVs and basically hit the road. The water was pretty chilly up there in the northern part of California, so the boys were constantly wearing steamers and booties, and a couple of the state beach parks we stopped at had some fun little waves. The conditions weren't great. It was just a lot of beach break conditions, but the boys were definitely flaring up out there. The standout surfer from this trip definitely had to be Owen Wright. He was on fire, he was so consistent, he was landing all his punts, he was throwing his tail around, his fins were free, and basically he had the highest standard of surfing with the most consistent make rate out of anyone in the country and possibly even in the world. He went on to qualify soon after this trip, so it just was a sign that he was ready to go and mix it up with the big boys on the big tour. Garrett's the kind of surfer that had all the tricks in the book. He was pretty consistent too. I think he was just suffering from the wave quality to really go to town and show what he could do. But it was interesting watching him mix it up with these guys, and they're so competitive as a group that they all want to outdo each other, they all want to get the best clip, and they all want to show exactly where they're at in their career and how good they actually are.
Garrett does some weird, sick airs. Crews is a fucking rougher, right? He's a classic kid. He's just non-stop, full on.
Mitch Crews is from the Gold Coast, so the conditions on offer were pretty much right up his alley. Small beach breaks that he could do his little turns and do his little air reverses and all those kind of things on. It pretty much suited his style as well. He was the kind of kid though he was generally the last one to come in because he was so ambitious and so driven to try to get the best clips that he could get, that he'd stay out right till the end, just sort of hoping that wave was going to come, that he could, show off what he can do. Noah was probably a little bit overwhelmed with the calibre of surfers on this clip at this stage in his career. He's gone on now to be an absolute maniac in some of the best big waves ever. But at this point, he was more focusing on his turns and his air game. The standard of waves on this trip were definitely not suitable for Dean Bowen's surfing. Dean's the kind of guy who loves charging big barrels, big left-hand barrels particularly, but anything that's got some grunt to it is right up his alley. This trip was a lot of beach breaks, it was turns, it was punts, and Dean's such a great surfer in all conditions, it just really didn't lend to him having the best performance in most of those waves.
Dino just charges the biggest waves, and it's crazy to see kids that are around my age doing that kind of stuff. So.
The guy that's got the smoothest style and all the tricks in the book is Stuart Kennedy. He rips in all conditions, big, small, whatever. He's got an attitude that goes with it, and I really like Stuart's surfing. He put in a really good performance at so many different waves. He can turn, he can do some mad punts, he can surf his backhand, he can surf his forehand. I was really impressed with Stu on this trip, and I really love watching that guy surf. At some of the locations, there was no one better than Owen Wright. He was so consistent and sticking all his moves that he was just streets ahead of all the other boys. There was one session where he was going absolutely ham, doing the biggest punts and just riding out of all of them. I was really impressed with how well he surfed, and he's gone on to have an amazing career. So these trips really were a good indication of who's going to be some of the best surfers in the world. From a filmmaker's perspective, shooting new locations is so exciting, and getting different backdrops and seeing how things look from different angles is always part of the challenge. You've got to go into it with an open mind and really work hard to get in the right spot at the right time, and it's that magic combination of when the elements combine and the surfer's doing the right thing, the light's in the right place, and you're onto it to record the clip. At this point in my career, I was shooting a lot of stuff from land on my little HVX 200. Trusty little beast, those things. Pretty good picture quality, but I was tripod guy on the sand, and I don't even think I took a water housing on this trip. I didn't own one at this point. So yeah, it was fun times back then, and you really had to pay attention to bag the best clips. It's a tricky thing shooting from land sometimes, because you might be waiting for a while for waves, and you turn around, you look down at the sand, you scratch your leg and you look up, and one of the boys is halfway through doing a crazy air or something, and you're just like, oh, have I missed it? And then they don't make it, and you're kind of stoked because they would have been coming in saying, hey, did you get my clip? But you know, that's part of the game. When you are filming from land, you really have to concentrate on what's going on out in the water. When you film the same guys regularly, you get to know their paddle style, so you can tell who's who and which way they're generally going to go. You just got to make sure you're on the ball to get the best clips. We took a trip down to Santa Cruz and we hung out with Ken Skin Dog Collins. He was really cool and hosted us at his place for a little while. Took us out to these giant redwood cedar forests, and the boys were just, you know, taking it all in.
It's a beautiful piece of the earth right here, you know. Good to come up here, breathe some of the fresh oxygen air, because you don't get much of this in the big city. Get away from it all.
We wound our way down the coast and ended up at Lower Trestles in California, and it was good for the boys to get out there and surf a wave that had some regular formation to it. We'd been on beach breaks pretty much consistently up until this point, so the boys were kind of having a bit of fun out there. Further down the coast, we wound up at this wave park in San Diego. It's a stationary wave where this water just blasts out of a jet up this incline, then turns into a barrel, and the boys were going ham out there. It was actually really fun to watch them, and yeah, it was a fun day for everyone.
So much fun.
Not many people say they've been in camper vans from San Francisco to San Diego, so that's a tick out of my box. Probably never do it again.
Covered a lot of ground on this trip. We'd surfed a lot of different locations, seen all parts of the country that we'd never been to before, visited a lot of the state beach parks, and, you know, took in some cool scenery. So it was really rad to experience those things. By the end of the trip, I think the vibe was we were ready to go home. You know, we went and checked out Hollywood for a little while just to kind of do more of that touristy thing. But yeah, by the time that was all said and done, the boys were ready to wrap it up and get home. Overall, it was a fun trip. Didn't get the waves we wanted, but another cool adventure, and, you know, for us, that's what it's all about.